A few years ago, a sociologist studied the religious lives of teenagers. What he concluded is that most of them had a view of God as either a divine butler or a cosmic therapist. In other words, they weren't particularly interested in God himself, only what he could do for them. This really shouldn't surprise us because most religious traditions teach us to use God to achieve some other desire. For example, in many traditions we're taught that we should live under God. By obeying commands, we're told God will bless us and be on our side. The idea is to use God to control one's life and world. Life over God says following the right principles is how to guarantee a good life. In this case, we use God as the source for practical help and advice. Life from God rightly teaches that He is our provider, but that's all it sees Him as. This posture makes Him into a divine vending machine to give us what we desire. Life for God makes everything about God's mission in the world. It uses God to give us a sense of meaning and purpose. In each of these postures, God is used to achieve some other desire. He is a means to an end. He provides us with a sense of control or blessings or the principles by which we govern our lives or a sense of meaning and purpose and direction. And there's a truth to each of those postures. God does supply us with those things. But in the end, if we really want to experience life with God, which is the central calling of Jesus Christ, then we need to see that God is not merely the means by which we achieve our treasure. In the Christian faith, God is our treasure. The reason why a great many people in the church today are failing to experience the freedom and wonder of the Christian life is because they've never been taught to actually desire and want God. They don't treasure Him. Instead, they've been taught to merely use Him to achieve some lesser desire. To make sense of what a life with God actually looks like, let's break it down into 3 parts. Imagine someone dreaming of a new house, or a vacation, or a vintage Mustang. Life with that new car begins with dreaming about it, envisioning it, treasuring it. The same is true of life with God. We must first have a clear vision of who He is, His beauty, His goodness, and His love. When we don't have a clear vision of who God is, we're not going to desire Him. We won't treasure Him. At best, we'll seek to use Him to achieve something else. But in the Scriptures, we're told that all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell in Jesus Christ, that He is the image of the invisible God. In Jesus, we are given a clear and ravishing vision of who God is, of His beauty, of His love, of His goodness, and His power. That explains why people were crawling over themselves trying to be closer to Christ. Sadly, today, few people are given a clear vision of who Jesus is, even within the church. Instead, we're given some lesser vision, a vision for the church or its growth, a vision for mission or for a better life, a happier family, a more successful job. And when that happens, God is reduced once again from the end and desire of our lives to just the means by which we achieve these lesser things. But treasuring isn't enough. You can dream about a vintage Mustang all day, but in order to live with it, you must actually acquire it. After treasuring God, we must be united with Him. By Christ's death and resurrection, the sin that has separated us from God is removed, and the way is opened for us to be united with Him once again. In Christ, we are reconciled to God. We are united again with what we treasure most. Many people have come to believe that the gospel is about how we get into heaven. But if that's the full understanding of the gospel we have, all we've done is reduce God to a means to an end again. He's how we avoid hell. But the truth is, the gospel's not about how we get into heaven. The gospel is about how people get to God. It's about being united again with Him when He's our treasure. Finally, life with God finds fulfillment as we experience Him. As with the previous 2 steps, this one is also made possible through Christ. By His example and by sending His Spirit, Jesus taught us what a life lived with God looks like. It's not just about prayer and reading the Bible, but it's the rich and mysterious mingling of our spirit with His in ceaseless communion. Every other posture of religious life, whether it's life under God, over God, from God, or for God, they each try to use Him to achieve some lesser desire. But life with God is different, because it doesn't want to use God. It wants God. But it all begins with a clear vision of who He is, a vision that comes to us by His grace through Jesus Christ. And when we receive it, God ceases to be a means to an end, and He begins to become our treasure.